Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling, I think, a really, really fascinating topic.
Yeah.
Which is hikikomori.
Hikikomori.
And we've got a great expert here with us today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, so I've been studying this phenomenon for a while now.
Wow.
It's a very complex and fascinating phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So hikikomori, for people who may not have heard the term before, can you just give us a brief definition of what it is that we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So hikikomori is a term used to describe individuals, predominantly young people in Japan, who withdraw from social life, and they confine themselves to their rooms for extended periods of time. Usually we're talking 6 months or more.
6 months or more?
Really a complete disengagement from the social world.
So it's not just, like being an introvert or enjoying time alone. This is like a complete cut off.
Yeah, it's not just a preference for solitude. It's really a deliberate retreat from the world as we know it.
Wow. And to give people like a sense of scale, because I know we've got a lot of statistics about this. Yeah. Just how prevalent is this in Japan? Like, how many people are we actually talking about?
So studies suggest that over 1 million people in Japan might be experiencing hikikomori.
1 million?
Yeah, it's a significant number.
That's huge.
Yeah, and it really makes you wonder what leads individuals to this point of withdrawal.
Right, what could possibly cause someone to just completely shut themselves off from the world for such a prolonged period of time?
It's a complex question and there's no easy answer.
Right.
There's not one single cause. But researchers have identified a number of contributing factors, and these range from societal pressures to individual psychological factors and even the influence of technology.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot to unpack here.
Definitely.
So let's start with maybe some of these societal pressures, because I know Japan has a very unique culture, and there are a lot of expectations placed on young people.
Absolutely. So one of the most prominent factors is the intense pressure to conform and succeed that permeates Japanese society.
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard about that.
You've got the rigorous academic system, the competition for university spots, and the demanding work culture that emphasizes long hours and dedication.
So basically you're under pressure to perform from a very young age.
Exactly. And for some, this pressure cooker environment can become too much.
I can imagine.
Leading to anxiety, fear of failure, and ultimately this desire to escape.
So it's like the pressure builds and builds, and then for some people, the only way to cope is to just withdraw completely.
Yeah, it's a way of opting out of a system that feels too overwhelming.
Right. And it's not just the pressure to succeed, right? There are other societal factors that contribute to this as well.
That's right. Another significant factor is the issue of bullying, or ijin, as it's known in Japan.
Ijin.
Yeah, bullying in Japanese schools can be quite pervasive, and for some, it leaves deep emotional scars.
So we're talking about maybe being teased, being excluded from social groups.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes even physical harm.
So for someone who's already struggling with those pressures to conform and succeed, bullying can just make the outside world seem even more hostile.
Exactly. It can make them feel like there's no safe space for them outside of their own room.
So the home becomes like a refuge.
A fortress against a world that feels threatening.
Right. And then we also have to talk about the role of technology in all of this. Because Japan is also known for being, very technologically advanced.
Absolutely. And technology, while it can connect us in many ways, it can also create new avenues for withdrawal.
So how does that play into hikikomori?
Well, the allure of video games, anime, online communities can be very strong.
Especially for people who are already feeling isolated.
Exactly. In these virtual worlds, you can control your environment.
Right.
You can connect with like-minded individuals. And you can escape the anxieties of face-to-face interaction.
So it becomes like a substitute for real-world interaction.
For some, yes.
Wow. So we've got these societal pressures, we've got this issue of bullying, and we've got technology kind of providing this alternative reality. But it sounds like there's also an individual component to this as well.
Yeah.
Like there must be some underlying psychological factors at play.
Absolutely. We can't overlook the role of mental health in all of this.
Okay.
Conditions like social anxiety, depression, and social phobia often underpin hikikomori.
So it's not just a matter of, being shy or introverted. These are actual mental health conditions that need to be addressed.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that mental health is just as important as physical health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma surrounding mental health in many cultures, including in Japan.
Yeah, and that stigma makes it even harder for individuals to seek help.
Right. Because if you're already feeling ashamed or embarrassed about your struggles, you're less likely to reach out for support.
Exactly, and that can just perpetuate the cycle of isolation.
So it's like a perfect storm brewing.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
You've got these societal pressures, you've got the individual vulnerabilities, and then you've got this cultural stigma that prevents people from getting the help they need.
It's a really complicated issue.
Definitely.
And it makes you wonder about the long-term consequences of all of this, both for the individuals who are living in withdrawal and for their families.
Yeah, that's a crucial part of the conversation.
Absolutely. So the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those consequences in more detail. We'll look at the impact on individuals, the impact on families, and we'll also discuss some of the ways that Japan is trying to address this complex challenge.
It's a fascinating area to explore.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into Hikikomori.
Welcome back to our exploration of Hikikomori. So we were just talking about some of the factors that contribute to this phenomenon. You know, the societal pressures, the bullying, the role of technology, the mental health aspects.
Yeah, it's really complex.
It is. And now I think it's important to shift our focus to the consequences of this isolation.
Right, because it's one thing to understand why someone might withdraw, but it's another thing to understand the impact that withdrawal has on their life.
Exactly.
So let's start with the individuals themselves. What are the long-term effects of prolonged social isolation?
Well, imagine spending months or even years confined to a single room. Your social skills start to atrophy.
Right. If you're not interacting with people regularly, you kind of lose the ability to.
Exactly. The confidence to navigate social situations dwindles. The world outside can start to feel very alien and intimidating.
Like you're almost frozen in time, while the world keeps moving on.
Right. And the longer this isolation goes on, the harder it becomes to break free.
Because the anxieties just keep building up.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle.
And it's not just the individuals who suffer, right?
No, definitely not.
Families are impacted as well, especially parents.
Absolutely. Parents often bear a heavy burden.
I can imagine. There's probably a lot of worry, a lot of guilt.
There is. You know, they worry about their child's well-being. They feel guilty, wondering if they could have done something to prevent this.
And there's also the societal stigma surrounding mental health.
Right. Which makes it even harder for families to talk about what's happening.
And so they end up feeling very isolated themselves.
Exactly. It's a very difficult situation for everyone involved.
And it's not just an emotional toll, right? There's a financial burden as well.
Absolutely. If the individual is not working, the family has to support them.
And that could put a lot of strain on resources.
Definitely.
So it's clear that hikikomori is a serious issue with far-reaching consequences.
It is.
But the good news is that Japan is starting to take this issue more seriously.
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift in recent years.
So what are some of the ways that Japan is trying to address hikikomori?
Well, one initiative that's been gaining traction is the Oyasato program.
Oyasaso.
Yeah, it
Right.
means parental visitor program.
Okay, so what does that involve?
Basically, trained professionals, often people who have personal experience with hikikomori, visit the families of individuals who are withdrawn.
So they go right to the homes.
Yeah. The goal is not to force the person out of their room.
Right.
It's more about building trust.
Like establishing a connection.
Exactly. Offering support and encouragement.
So it's a very non-confrontational approach.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's been shown to be quite effective.
Because it takes the pressure off the individual
Exactly.
and allows them to kind of open up at their own pace.
Right. And in addition to these home visits, there are also a number of rehabilitation and support centers that have been established specifically for people with hikikomori.
So these centers provide a safe space for individuals to start reintegrating into society.
Exactly. They offer a range of programs and activities designed to help people rebuild their social skills and regain their confidence.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, it varies depending on the center, but some common activities include things like occupational therapy,
Okay.
social skills training, art therapy, music therapy, even gardening.
Wow, so it's really about finding what works for each individual
Right.
and giving them the tools they need to start taking small steps towards recovery.
Exactly. And along with these more individualized approaches, there's also been a growing movement to raise awareness about hikikomori and to destigmatize mental health in general.
Because that stigma is a huge barrier to seeking help.
It is. And it's something that needs to be addressed at a societal level.
Absolutely. So it sounds like Japan is making some real progress in tackling this issue.
Yeah, there's still a long way to go,
Yeah.
but there's definitely a lot of hope and a lot of innovative approaches approaches being developed.
That's great to hear. And it's a reminder that even though hikikomori might seem like a very specific phenomenon, it actually has a lot to teach us about mental health and well-being in general.
I agree.
So in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of those broader lessons, and we'll talk about what we can all learn from Japan's experience with hikikomori.
Sounds.
And we are back for the third and final part of our look at hikikomori. So we've talked about the causes, the impact on individuals and families, Japan's response. But it makes you wonder, right? Does this have implications beyond Japan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hikikomori as a term might be specific to Japan. But a lot of the underlying factors that we've talked about, the societal pressures, the anxiety, the lure of technology, those are things that people experience all over the world.
It's true. It's like, could hikikomori just be the tip of the iceberg?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about the pressure to succeed in today's world, the constant need to be connected, the fear of missing out. All of that can be incredibly overwhelming.
And it's not just young people either.
No, definitely not. Adults are feeling it too.
So what can we learn from Japan's experience with hikikomori? How can we use this knowledge to create healthier societies?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of early intervention and destigmatizing mental health. Japan's experience shows us what can happen when people are afraid to seek help.
Right. It's like the longer you wait, the harder it is to break free from that cycle of isolation.
Exactly. So we need to create environments where people feel comfortable talking about their struggles.
Where it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly. And we need to make sure that mental health services are accessible to everyone who needs them.
Absolutely. And it's not just about professional help either.
Right. No, definitely not. Support from family and friends is crucial.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the Oyasato program.
Yeah.
Just having someone who listens without judgment can make a huge difference.
It can. And it's something that we can all do. We can all be more supportive of the people in our lives.
So really addressing hikikomori or any form of social withdrawal, it requires a kind of societal shift.
I think so. We need to move away from this culture of individualism and competition.
And towards a culture of empathy and compassion.
Exactly.
Where people feel supported and valued for who they are.
Right.
Well, I think that's a great place to end our deep dive into hikikomori. It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking conversation, and I hope it's left you with some things to think about.
Me too.
So if you're interested in learning more about hikikomori or about mental health in general, there are a ton of great resources available online.
Yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it.
And remember, even small acts of kindness can make a big difference in someone's life.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.